Free to check out our channel to see our previous webinars. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Ange from Harlowe Green.
Hi, I'm Ange. I'm the creator of Harlowe Green. It's a little sustainable living business and refillery that's about an hour north of like Kingston Belleville area. So the closest thing would be Bon Echo Provincial Park. And I just wanted to welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're going to talk a little bit about getting started with sustainable living and then just some broader tips. Just to begin with, I wanted to say thanks to Sustainable Kingston for having me. This is my first webinar, so excited to see how this goes. And I wanted to thank everybody that was here today because this is just like a little piece of a really big conversation that's happening right now. And just by being here to learn a little bit more about it or having like that curiosity, it's already like a great first step into making sure that we have a safer environment for future generations. So thanks for being here. And you can just leave a question. We're going to try and have some time at the end where I can answer questions. So just leave it in the chat and then we'll come back to them later. So let's see. Here we go. So I thought I would talk a little bit about me. I'm a mom of two boys, and like I mentioned, I started this little business, never expected it to be what it is today, and that's not me in the picture, but I thought I would try to find a good visual of what my journey through trying to be more sustainable and live in a more eco-friendly way, that's like the best picture that I could find to show just how challenging it was and how many sort of like fails and restarts I had to do. So I thought I would talk about this just because I've experienced a lot of the barriers that I think are there for people in trying to be eco-friendly. And then you can get a sense of why Sustainable Kingston asked me to be here. So I grew up on a crop farm in Lindsay, and although I wasn't doing a lot of the farming, sort of the background of my life was always nature, the weather. It really sort of controlled the day-to-day of my parents' livelihood. So it was always just sort of in the background, and the understanding that it really affects a lot of the systems that we rely upon. And my interest sort of continued when I went to the University of Guelph. So I did my major in English, and then my minor was in environment and resources. So we were always talking about sustainability, current environmental issues, different industries, the way they were using resources. So even though I studied and took courses in this, when I left university, I still really didn't have an understanding of how I could make a difference just in my day-to-day. So for us, like if you're in your 30s, I'm almost 34, you probably grew up in sort of that 80s, 90s, like everything's super convenient, super cheap, like let's go shopping at the mall all the time sort of mentality. So didn't really have any idea of where to start. And I was even interested in this. So I tried to like get into it. And really all that meant when I got my own home was buying like the bottle of cleaner at Loblaws or Canadian Tire with like the green leaf on it. I never thought about like the packaging or anything that was inside it. I was like, all right, this is the way to go. And then I was frustrated because those products are usually just made from a big company. They're a lot of water. They don't work very well. And I would get discouraged and end up going back and buying my Lysol or whatever cleaner I grew up with. So I felt like I was on this like treadmill of trying and failing and like restarting. And I think that I didn't really have an idea of where I should go next. So I would spend my time folding my laundry, watching YouTube videos, and came across this thing called zero waste. And this was 6 or 7 years ago. So there was not a lot of information. And although it was super interesting, like these people lived pretty insane lives in like tiny houses or tiny apartments, or they had like a duffel bag with like their homemade toothpaste and like 2 pairs of pants in it. It was really interesting, but it wasn't really something that I could actually do where I was living. So I wanted to have a home. And most of these people live like more nomadic lifestyles. I live in the middle of the woods, so I wasn't able to just walk to my local bakery and have them pop like a loaf into my cloth bag. And I wanted to have kids and a family. And a lot of the people were living just sort of this transient lifestyle, or they were a student or just living on their own. So while it was really interesting and gave me some ideas of things I could try, like trying out wool dryer balls, for example, they weren't really talking about how to actually change over things in your own home. And I really just felt like it was interesting, but not really doable in our current society. So a lot of it was in Europe. I didn't have access to a refillery at the time. And it was just tough because I could see all of these issues in the environment, but not really know where to start or what to do. So anyways, I want to start with like the idea that zero waste is this tough thing that for a lot of people, they think it's like this perfection lifestyle that you have to live like these people that only had like a couple of things. And even though they only have like a couple of things, they always still carry like their jar of like their 4 pieces of garbage they've made for the year. So it seems really overwhelming and tough. And there's no real sort of like discussion of the journey in the middle, but I think that's really starting to happen now. So it doesn't have to be this perfect thing. I think it's becoming more accessible, especially with all of the refilleries and like little shops opening in the last couple of years. And that's really how I got my start. I think the biggest change in my journey came when I decided to start sharing and talking about it. So for me, it felt like this weird little thing that I was interested in, and I had nobody else to talk to really about it, or sort of troubleshoot or go through some of this stuff with. And I started, I think it was Earth Day in 2017, just sharing on my personal social media, talking about the things that I was trying. And all of a sudden, the people that I knew were having these conversations with me, and they would give me ideas, or they'd say, have you tried this? Or have you seen this at this store? And I got motivated. I kept going. I kept trying things. Things started to work for me. So then I'd share them, and then I would get a little bit more motivated. And I had one of my good friends say to me, like, this picture on this one day where you shared about cleaning your toilet with like a wooden toilet brush and citric acid made me want to start. I wanted to start a business, but now I know what I want to start my business in. And although this person totally would have found this on their own, I just think of like all of the people in my own life that have sort of switched over to things. And when the pandemic happened, I could no longer go to Ottawa or go to Lindsay and do my refills or have access to like these smaller shops where I could buy this stuff, and thought, well, I know enough people now that are interested in this. I'm going to just have like a little mudroom closet refillery. And now it has just continued to grow. So if there's anything you can take from just my journey, is that it is a journey. It's going to take a long time. It's not one of those things where you can go out and just buy everything and all of a sudden you'll be the eco person. It's actually the opposite of that. So start sharing, find somebody to join in with your journey, and it will be a lot more fun. So I wanted to start by talking about eco anxiety, because it's going to come up. I think it comes up for a lot of people, and it's a huge barrier to getting into this. And the term itself means a chronic fear of environmental doom. And we have a lot of environmental information coming at us all the time now. So I didn't even want to start with facts about why we should be living a more sustainable lifestyle. I think if you're here, you're already pretty well aware of them. But generally, it leaves you with this intense fear or stress that the world is ending in a couple of years. We are not able to make changes fast enough, and we're just listening to all these facts about this number of endangered animals. We only have clean air and clean water for this many more years. If you have children, oh my gosh, like what is the world going to be for them? So in my own journey, even though I know I'm moving forward, I've had to deal with this over and over. So I think the problem with this is people don't know how to move forward. It doesn't always give you a path of how to make changes, and it feels like you have to do everything at once. It has to be perfect. You have to do all these changes right now. It's going to be so expensive. It's almost too overwhelming to begin. So I want to offer sort of this alternative route to trying to be more sustainable. And I think I wanted to start by talking about the mindset shift that has to happen. So like I say, you can't just go to like a little eco shop and buy all the gear and throw out your old gear and then you're just like a sustainable person. We need to sort of step back and see how we can change our mindset just moving forward in general. So I thought I would start with just some like overall stuff that might help shape that mindset or a lens that you can look at it through. So to be, or for something to be sustainable, it just means that the process can go on and on for a long time. So it can be maintained and it's not going to collapse. So we're going to talk about a few systems that are not sustainable and they lead to sort of this huge pile of waste at the end of it. It kind of involves stepping back and looking at sort of the whole like life cycle of something. So actually understanding where your food comes from or where that product comes from or who made it and what are the effects while you're using it and what happens to it when it's at the end of its life. So right now, I think we see something on sale and we just want to buy that because it's going to save us a buck. Or we see something awesome, but we don't really have any connection to how it's made or what we're going to do with it when we're done using it. It's sort of this quick, we buy things and we don't really think about it. So the shift that has to happen is sort of this change in mindset when we're acquiring new things. So I'm going to tell you, and I say this all the time on my social media, that you need to take it easy, doing one thing at a time, make sure that this can happen for a long time. So even if you only change one thing a month, at the end of the year, you probably made 12 changes, where if you tried to make those 12 changes like immediately after this webinar, like you're probably only going to be able to stick with a couple of them. So your impact is lessened if you do these things like slowly and do some sort of like lifestyle change in between. And I already mentioned that you really should find somebody that you connect with, find some accounts on Instagram or Facebook that are inspiring you. So it's just sort of always in your periphery that you can keep moving forward and stay motivated. So back to like the terms, I'm going to talk about eco-friendly versus sustainable so we can sort of keep trying to understand this. Eco-friendly, I think now, in my opinion, it just means it's better than the worst option. Like it's not the worst, but it's also could not be the best. And unfortunately, eco-friendly has become like this big marketing term. And while something might be a little bit better than what they were doing before, it's a little bit frustrating to sort of find out in the meantime of what you're using, what you thought was so great, might not be that awesome. So in comparison, sustainable looks at sort of all this stuff before you get into it, the whole life cycle sort of look at it. It does require a little more thought, but there are a ton of places now, like luckily it's more accessible for us to be able to find these things, or we have people that maybe we know what their values are for their stores or their little local shops, and they're doing the research for you, or they can tell you why it's a more sustainable option. So I decided to sort of show you this with produce bags. So obviously the worst option would be going into the grocery store and just grabbing those single-use plastic bags. So like really, they're not protecting your fruit or your vegetables from anything because they're not clean sitting there on the shelf. And most people take them home and they only get used for a couple of days usually. So it's a real single-use plastic and it's really cheaply made and it basically ends up in the garbage. An eco-friendly option for this would be if you walked into the grocery store, and I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. Like if you're at Loblaws, they have them in like the produce section and they're only like $3 or $4 and it's like a package of reusable produce bags. But then when you open them up, you realize they're just going to fall apart and that the plastic material that's in there is a little bit better than the single-use plastic, but it's still plastic. So it's going to shed these little bits of microplastics when you're using it because it's not made very well. And then at the end of it, you are just going to have like this pile of plastic material you have to throw out anyway. So it's eco-friendly in the sense that you can keep using it, but it's not the best option. It's just not the worst option. And I tried to pick a picture to show you like a sustainable option for this, where I think the bag in this picture looks like it was something else before. So using like material you already have, or like an old sheet that might be ripped, or some tea towels, and just making your own bag, that would be a sustainable option because you're using something that was going to be waste already. It's hopefully a natural fiber, so it can just decompose when it's done with, and it's not doing that microplastic shedding, and you can keep washing it and not worry that it's going like down the drain. And it should probably last a little bit longer too. So hopefully that gives you like a good sense of something that's eco-friendly and something that is sustainable, where you're looking sort of at all of the pieces. So this change in mindset goes into like a lot of things. So sustainability doesn't just apply to like a product, it has to deal with design, and it can be applied across industries and levels of government. So circular design and a circular economy is sort of considering all of these things into a product's life cycle. So the most simple example I could give you of like a circular design is a beer bottle. So you buy the beer bottle from the beer store, you drink the beer, and then the whole idea is that you bring that beer bottle back to the beer store so that it can be used again. So although some of the beer bottles might get broken and some may not make it back to the store, they've already thought of that and have like an incentive for you to bring it back so that it can be reused. So that's sort of the idea of like planning for like the whole way around. And I thought I would give an example of a non-sustainable system that exists that can't go on and on forever without having a huge impact. So going with fast fashion, I feel like it's a pretty like hot topic that people are talking about like with sustainability right now. And there's all these new amazing like Canadian companies coming out, and it's kind of an exciting thing, and we're learning more about it. But when you think about if you go to like H&M or Old Navy or like Zara, you're buying something that's trendy and it's really not made to last, and it's not a sustainable system. So if we looked at like the beginning of it, we'd be thinking about like, how is this thing made? So it's made across the world, so it already needs to be like brought over. And when we're thinking about like labor and environmental considerations, we know that the people making these bits of fast fashion are probably not getting paid. They probably aren't in a very safe work environment. The idea is that they're cutting costs everywhere that they can. Sometimes it involves like children making these clothes. And then the byproducts, the chemicals involved, there's no sort of, well, we need to deal with this in a responsible way. It is definitely the cheapest route for dealing with any of the byproducts or the resources that are involved. So extracting them initially. So not really made in a way that can go on and on forever. And then the impacts that it might have during its lifespan. So we would think about how long this is going to last. So it's not made to last very long. You may, like, when I think back to some of the clothes that I bought when I was in university, I would wear it for just a couple of weeks or maybe a couple of months tops, and then want to just go shopping and buy like a new shirt to wear when I was going out. So it has a really short lifespan, and that's the point. They want you to keep buying. But a lot of these pieces are made out of polyester or nylon or something that's made with plastic. So every time it gets washed, every time you're wearing it, it's breaking off all of these little plastic fibers as it starts to break down. And that's like an impact that is sort of hidden, but it's happening the whole time you have this because it's not made with a natural fiber. And then at the end of its life, some things like you could take it to the thrift store, but they cannot resell everything. Not all textiles that end up at a thrift store end up in like a textile recycling program, they probably end up in the dump. And then it's just this plastic material that's there for long term. So when we step back and look at this cycle, we can see how there's like impacts all the way along, and it can't just keep going on and on forever because it's going to collapse at some point. You're going to have this huge pile of plastic waste at the end. You're going to have people that are making these clothes that have all sorts of health effects and environmental effects where they're living. And somebody somewhere is making a lot of money off of this cycle. So if you have fast fashion in your closet right now, the idea isn't that you just like throw it all away right now because it's so bad. It just means that you need to use that as long as you can and try to deal with it in a good manner when you're getting rid of it. So that is an example of a really not sustainable system and what we need to sort of shift away from and understand like as a consumer. So I tried to show this again. Here's a little life cycle again. And I used window cleaner and I used something from my own sustainable living journey. So what I used growing up was Windex and paper towel, and I still use that until I was like, I'm going to become more eco, and I got myself some microfiber cleaning cloths, and I would use the water out of my own tap. And then now what I feel is more sustainable, I use vinegar and water. So vinegar comes from a refill situation. The water just comes from my own tap. Sometimes I boil it and sometimes I don't do that. And then rags, so reusing a tea towel. So we have lots of cotton tea towels that get stained really easy with kids. So we're just reusing them for cleaning. So if we go over to the start of the cycle, we're thinking about who made this, what was used to make it, any labor and environmental considerations. So when we think about Windex, they're creating a new plastic bottle every single time. And all of the chemicals that are involved with the ingredients inside that bottle. So there's that creation, and then we have to ship it around. So products that have liquid in them, so a lot of water content, have a higher carbon footprint because they're being shipped around. They're heavier than if you just had like the basic ammonia and other ingredients that go into Windex and had to fill up the water yourself kind of thing. And then paper towel, like it's only meant to be used once. And I know we can grow some more trees, so it is using a renewable resource, but it uses a lot of water. There's bleach that's involved with the process. There's a lot of processing in order to make that paper towel to be used only one time with that Windex. So that's the beginning for Windex, not awesome. And then when we look at microfiber cleaning cloths, they are like a plastic. Microfiber is like really small plastic fibers. So you're still making a new plastic product at the beginning of that. But like a pro here is you can use your own water out of your own tap to do this. So you're not shipping it around. So it's definitely better than the worst option. And then if you wanted to try and get this down to like a really low impact level, vinegar and water. So if you're doing it with the refillery situation, you can keep filling your own bottle. You could even fill your own Windex bottle. So if you're using a bottle you already had in your recycling and rags that already had a life cycle, that's like extra bonus eco points because it's already had its own life cycle as whatever it was intended to be. And now you're sending it back around. So you're giving it a longer life. So if you have something that you can already refill, that's awesome. You're not creating a new plastic bottle every single time. So then during the life cycle, all of these products are going to have a different impact. So we're into how you're using it now. So Windex, I think like something that it seems funny to me now thinking back, but I just sort of thought that when whatever cleaning product I was using, like once I washed it off something, like it went down the drain or sprayed it out onto the window, it just sort of like dealt with itself and went away, which is like such a naive way to think. But if you're not like on that train of thought, you're not really thinking that, okay, like all of the chemicals that are inside this Windex bottle, they don't just go away. Like I'm either spraying them into my home environment and it's staying on a surface, or it's in the air until it can degrade, which chemicals all have different amounts of time. that they take to do that. Or if you're outside and you're cleaning the outside of your windows, like it's falling outside as well and having those impacts outside. So it definitely is releasing things while you're using it. And paper towel isn't going to have a very long life cycle. So if we thought about all this stuff at the end of the year, you're going to have like a big pile of paper towels, and you're probably going to end up with a couple of Windex bottles because they don't have a very long life cycle. Then the microfiber cleaning cloth, you definitely have a longer life cycle with that. But unfortunately, every time you wash that thing and you use it, it's just like breaking off all these little plastic fibers, which are becoming like a new concern that people are becoming aware of. And then the vinegar and water, I don't have to worry if I was spraying this into my home environment. I don't have to worry as much if I'm outside. If it's a really highly concentrated vinegar, it could kill a plant, but it's not going to stick around and cause like the chemical effects that a conventional cleaner might. And then hopefully I'm using a rag that just is made out of natural fiber. So even if parts of it break off while I'm using it or washing it, that's still okay. It can decompose naturally. And then finally, end of the life cycle. So you're asking yourself how this item is going to degrade, like not just the actual product, but the physical like bottle and all of that. So Windex, you have a plastic bottle every time. I just saw this funny ad by Windex, how they're becoming more eco-friendly by allowing you to buy new Windex bottles with no sprayer on the top so you can reuse the sprayer, and how this is like they've gone green. So you still have like the plastic bottle you're dealing with every time. And we're all becoming more aware that plastic recycling isn't really a solution to anything. We're ending up with only like 8 or 9% of plastic actually getting recycled. So if you have 10 Windex bottles, only one of those is going to be remade into something new. And then your paper towels, they have bleach in them, they have other byproducts, and they also have your Windex sprayed all over them. So they're going to go into the environment and do their thing, leach out that way as well too. The microfiber cleaning cloths, you're not going to be throwing these out as often as the Windex bottle and the the paper towel. But at the end of its life, even though it's plastic, you can't recycle that thing. It's got to go in the garbage, and it could stick around for up to a couple hundred years as it breaks apart. And then finally, hopefully I'm reusing a bottle that I have, and I won't have to replace that thing, mixing up my vinegar and water until something breaks down. Same thing with the rags. Hopefully I can just keep using those, but then they can degrade because it's a natural fiber. And then I can just keep refilling. So it's sort of the consideration of everything from the beginning to the end. Obviously, like it's a lot, right? So that's why I just keep saying do one thing at a time. And kind of touched on this a little bit, but the golden rule of like trying to get into sustainability is to use what already exists. So you're like slowing way down on buying anything new. And then when you do buy something new, you really are trying to think about what you're choosing, and not just like buying the next thing when you're in the store and you think, oh, like that's great, or oh, that's a good price, I'm just going to buy it. I don't even know if I need it. So I put that on there as the paradox because I think a lot of people approach this as an opportunity to get into like a new hobby, and they have to buy some new stuff. I had a girl interview me last year, and she was like, I don't want to break the bank. Like, what are your top 10 things that I should buy? And it was actually sort of this walk backwards and say, like, you don't actually have to buy anything to start making changes. That's not the point. So green marketing is a thing. I'm like a store in a business, but I just continue saying like, you shouldn't be buying this stuff if you still have perfectly good things at home. Like using those items up to like the very end of their life cycle is actually better than just throwing them all out and then buying the eco option. So an example of this, if you're buying bread in bags and you have yogurt containers or margarine tubs, and you're looking for something to freeze your new berries in, reusing those things is actually better than recycling all of that stuff and going out and buying like a fancy silicone like freezer bag. So try to, I guess, take this as the change in mindset needs to be thinking back to stopping buying new things and seeing what already exists, and not starting that like waste cycle over and over again with new things. So the most common question that people ask me are like, how do you get started with this? I feel like I don't know where to start. There's too many things. Now that I'm looking at the plastic in my home, it's like everywhere and I don't know what to do. So I have like 2 different ideas of how you could get started with this. This is like the journey or like the method that the approach that I took, and it has like I borrowed it from minimalism, which I also really like because it sort of has the same basis. And if you're going to buy something, like only buy what you need and buy like well, so that you don't have to continue buying, and borrow things or reuse things that other people have instead of just going and getting a new thing. So this is where I get this idea from, and it's worked out pretty good for me, and a few other people that are working on this. So firstly, you want to gather up what exists. So you probably already have a ton of things in your own home that you need to use up. So if you think about the bathroom, I had a girl, actually, I was just chatting with. She said she went out and bought like a safety razor right away at Christmas time. Like she was so excited, but now it's July and she still hasn't used it because she's still using up all of the razors that she had. So all the little plastic heads that she had, all of the like single use ones that she might have had for traveling, she's still using those up. So using all that stuff up before you get the eco option is actually the most sustainable thing that you can do, because that stuff's already in the waste cycle. So rather than just throwing it out, you can sort of give it its life. And then if you make the decision like, hey, I'm gonna go for a safety razor next time, or I want to try a different option for toothpaste, or maybe you're going to change up your shampoo, just gather up what you already have in that category and use it up. And if you know you're not going to use it, don't just throw it out, like try to think of a better place to send that item. So I feel like everybody has those shampoo bottles that they've used some of it and they know it's just not going to work for them. So rather than dumping that out and recycling the container, you probably have family or friends that are like happy to take it off your hands and use it up. And if you don't have somewhere to give it, because you can't just drop this stuff off at a donation center, shelters are a really good place to bring part containers of things, and you're saving somebody that doesn't have anything in that category. They might have showed up at the shelter with just the clothes on their back. You're giving them something that they might need. So that's a really good place to also send some of the things you know that you might not be using. Just make sure you check with the shelter first before you go ahead and just drop it off. And then in the meantime, while you're using your stuff up, like do some research, figure out what you want to do. So like with toothpaste, there's like in our refillery, we have a liquid toothpaste that you could refill. Maybe you have sensitive teeth and you want to try just a little sample. That's like the beauty of a refillery. You can just buy a little bit instead of committing to paying for like a whole thing and then realizing you don't like it. Or maybe you want to try a tooth tab setup or situation if you travel a lot and that works better for you. Figure out what you want to go with. And then when you actually get rid of everything you need, you can buy just what you need instead of being like, hey, there's a sale, I'm going to buy 30 more tubes of toothpaste, when you already realize like I have enough toothpaste to last me for 2 more years. So it helps slow things down. You don't have to make the decisions like all at once. It's not as overwhelming. It kind of happens just naturally, like one time a week, you might be changing something, or even like less than that. So this has been a good approach. And then another approach that I do have a blog post about this that you can read more. And I also do like a little Friday sustainable living story. Usually I haven't done it the last few weeks as I try to set up my store. but I save them all in my highlights on my Instagram. So you can sort of watch some little videos and learn a little bit more about waste auditing there. But a waste audit is something you can do at any stage of your journey, and it can be useful whether you've never tried to attempt to reduce your waste or you've already been doing this for a couple of years. It's like helpful and easy for anybody to do, and everybody's different, right? Every household has different things that they're going through and that they're using. So it's a little more of a generic tool. So it sounds a little bit gross, but you can dump out your garbage. I did this with my bathroom garbage because I didn't have any like food waste or no like dirty diapers or anything like that in there. So I could just dump it out and sort it, or you can just look at your garbage and notice what you're putting in there. So just try to be mindful of what you're making the most waste in. And then you can look at what you've got and say like, hey, I have like a ton of floss in here. I could probably make that change. Or the example that I gave when I looked in my recycling bin was I had a ton of sparkling water cans, and I probably would have already paid for a soda stream like several times if I had have just went with that route first. And we were able to decrease a ton of packaging by just getting a soda stream. Doesn't mean that I never have like a sparkling water can ever again, but I've really reduced like in my recycling area of our home with that change. So it kind of can help you make a change one at a time, and you can do it as often as you need to. And you like maybe have a one category of waste where you're like, I can't approach that right now. But you could approach something else. It kind of gives you a starting point anyways. And then if you're new to the eco lifestyle, simple changes are like a great place to start with. So once you've used up what you need or what you already have and you're buying what you need, there are some things that are really easy to switch to. The only difference is making that decision when you're buying and then figuring out what to do with it when you're done with it. So like toothbrushes and wooden hairbrushes and combs, that type of thing, it's really easy because it's just, you don't have to learn a new skill or like change a habit or anything. You basically use the same thing. Same thing with home product refills. Obviously, you have to refill something at the beginning, but like you don't have to change up how you're washing your clothes or how you wash your dishes. Basically, use it the same way. And you can even use your old packaging to do that. Or like a beeswax candle, for example, doesn't have any packaging. So you still light the candle and everything the same, but maybe you have it like just in a little bowl or something instead. So not a huge, tough change. And it's something that like, if you do a couple simple changes and you get a little bit motivated, it's like an easy win for the beginning. Then other things require some habit changes, but they can be free. So I talked a little bit about rags, replacing our paper towel. So it was free. We were just using something that we didn't have a use for anyways. But then I had to remember to wash them on laundry day, or trying to do bulk shopping. That required me to like think of how this was going to work and have dispensers at home. That's a picture of me taking a crate to the grocery store to just fill up all of my produce. I have to remember to have that crate in my car, for example. And then I just made a quick list of some values or ways that you can get into shopping in a more conscious way. So I have the little hierarchy of needs there. Buying something new is sort of the last step. And when you do buy new, like trying to make a really good decision, it actually leads to a lot of like just really good feelings in your home, and you feel in control when you're shopping in a more conscious way, honestly. But a good resource is the Environmental Working Group. So there's a website, but you can also have an app on your phone. So you have it when you're out and about, and you can look up products. And if they don't have the product, because it is an American thing, you can look up ingredients. So you can actually feel if you know that something is as good as it says in the store. So a couple of things, look for compostable or biodegradable. That basically just means it's going to break down in the environment and not leave like a long lasting effect in like a waterway, for example. Canadian or first world or third party certified made product, you can be sure that there are more regulations and that people are getting paid fairly. Woman owned is just sort of something that I really focus on with my business, because I feel like being a female business owner is so tough, and I try to celebrate that. And then small shops and businesses that are local to your area. These businesses are paying taxes in your area. They're contributing to the school fundraiser, the Christmas raffle. They're the people that spend money in your own community. So that creates a good social effect as well. Socially good companies are important, especially if there's transparent giving practices, something that's handmade or fair trade certified, package free, or packaging that makes sense. Plastic free. So if you're going to rely on recycling, try to choose stainless steel, steel products, or glass, because they have a higher value recycling wise, or natural fiber if you're buying clothes or fabrics. And then I just thought I would quickly tell you how refills work, if this is like a new concept to you. So it's kind of like the bulk burn, but at home, you'd want to have like some kind of a dispenser and then a refill backup. So that's basically how it works. You can order online, so you can order your refill backup. And then I have some dispenser options if you don't have something that works for you at home. Like the picture that I chose was just a pump that fits on a mason jar. So you can just take it off and fit it on your new refill. And mason jars are used because they are so versatile. They're pretty durable, and they're also really accessible. And they get refilled from like these big jugs, which are refilled from the company. So the idea is that you're removing all that packaging waste, and you do have to pay a packaging price on goods. Sometimes it's really small because they're using a really cheap plastic, which is kind of worse, but it does make some higher quality goods more accessible. For example, we have Carina Organics, which is made in Canada, and it has fantastic scores on the environmental working group. You can save almost just over 30% of the product price than if you were buying like the little plastic bottles every time. So here's my takeaways for you. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I do sell stuff, so know that I will sometimes be showing you some of the things that I have, but I really try to add a lot of value and like information on how to use these things or make these changes. And I started a pretty solid blog when I first started my business, hoping to add a little bit more to that as things calm down for me. But if you take anything away from this, take away that you need to get talking about it, whether that's like at a farmer's market with the people that you're buying from, or a friend that you can get into this with, or somebody you can ask questions to. Like I always answer my direct messages and emails. Remember to take it easy. Like you don't have to be perfect at this. It's going to take a long time, and that's okay. Like have that mindset setting out. So if you fail at something, like you just try it again. It's all right. Reusing things is important. Buying new things has to sort of slow down and end. We as a country overconsume. I think we all are really aware that that's becoming a big issue. It leads to a lot of waste. So buying new really needs to slow down, and we have to buy better when we do. So choosing well, like being in control of your decisions when you're shopping, like being aware of what you're choosing, all of these things sort of make up this whole sustainable living thing. And then my final thought, I want to say thank you. That was a lot of talking and a lot of information, but remember that 30% of like North America's waste is individual, and 70% comes from large corporations and companies. So all of your changes still matter, because your choices when you're spending your money drive a lot of these larger corporations and companies to make a change. So if we never wanted to stop with the fast fashion or had any sort of concern with it, then it would just keep continuing because people are profiting off of this. But when we sort of step back from that cycle and choose differently, then businesses tend to follow, like the government is following, but they just go slowly because they wait for everybody to be on board with it. So know that all of your efforts make an impact, they make a difference, and it will lead to long-term change. And even if you can't see that long-term change right now, just remember like the effect that just me sharing some of my stuff had, the ripple effect that that had. So just know that you will also have a ripple effect in either like your kids' lives and teaching them to be different, or your friends and family. So that's everything I had to say. Thanks for being here. Gonna try and figure out how to find the chat now to answer some questions if there are questions. So Sophie or Tess, if you want to maybe just help me figure out where I find this. Or, oh my gosh.
I think maybe if you stop sharing your screen, it might be a bit easier. I think it'll bring it back to
Okay,
the main screen.
that help?
Yeah, and then it should be at the bottom.
Okay, so Norma mentioned that newspaper is better than paper towels. Yeah, so if you want to be cleaning your windows with that, that's awesome. Or like sopping up spills. Is there something in newspaper that helps clean? I think it's just the concept that you're using the paper, like the paper fiber. You can keep reusing that to clean your windows. I know it works great with vinegar and water. Buy Nothing groups on Facebook allows you to give to your neighborhood, recycle anything you don't use. So we have a local one that was started by a really fantastic gal, and it's preventing a ton of stuff from being thrown in the landfill. People don't have to pay for it now when it goes to the dump, and you can literally put it out by the roadside and people know it's there to come pick it up. Where are you located? Okay, so I am completely out of the way from Kingston. I live in Harlowe, so I'm about an hour north, which is why I do like the delivery system as well. So I'm up near Bon-Echo Provincial Park. So if you did come up, then you definitely want to come see the park type of thing. Have I used Buy Nothing? Yep. So we have one locally. It's amazing. I've gotten rid of some things on it. And then I know as I'm setting up my store, I have just different things that I collected when I was thrifting that now I don't need them. And so I would rather give it to somebody locally. Alternatives to plastic garbage bags. So in our municipality, we have to use the clear plastic bag. Maybe I'll try to share it on my Instagram today, but there is a really great product that is biodegradable, but it is still pretty tough and durable. So I'll share that. I get it from Terra 20, so that is something that I buy online. But unfortunately, like unless you're getting something biodegradable, that generally comes from the municipality. Diapers. So when it comes to diapers, there are some alternatives, like they're not perfect, obviously, but I would say coming from like a mom's perspective and having used cloth diapers and some of these diapers, 7th generation is our favorite, like our top choice. I found the Attitude diapers still have, they were just a little bit tough on my babe's bum, but 7th generation would be sort of the best eco-friendly alternative that I could find easily in Canada. How do we access refilling action from you if we live in Kingston, Wolfe Island? So my delivery is just changing. I used to come every Tuesday to Kingston, so it's $4 and I deliver whatever you've ordered to your doorstep. And if you're doing a mason jar situation, once you've emptied out, so I put a little sticker on the mason jar. Once you've emptied it out, you can wash it out and then put it back on your step and I'll give you the deposit back. So kind of like Limestone Organic Creamery or like an old-fashioned milkman. So you can do it that way. Alex, I know, is on Wolfe Island, so I think we were supposed to Zoom Alex about trying to get this started on Wolf Island, but you can get it anywhere within Kingston. You can check out our website to see where we deliver to you. As long as you order on Monday, then you can get it on Wednesday. All right, I think that's all the questions. There's one more question, it just came up. Do you bring many separate bags for all different fruits and veggies? So you could definitely do it that way. I find, like, for me, I have a bit of a crazy lifestyle with little kids. I just dump them all into that wooden crate picture that you'd seen. But I do have a bunch of little baggies that you can use them for that. If you wanted to have all, like, your red peppers in one or all of your apples in another, you could do it that way. Okay, I think that's it. Sorry, Sophie.
Yeah, so if no one has any other questions, thank you so much, Ange. It was a very great presentation and very informative. I think I speak for everyone when I say that I think we're all looking forward to apply these changes slowly into, like, our everyday lives. And thanks everyone else for joining us. And just a reminder, this will be posted afterwards, so feel free to share it with your friends and check it out again. Thank you. Have a great day.